Hari. Gopi Jana Bharaba Girivardhari Yashoda Nandan Rajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandan Rajadana Ranjana Yamunatira Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Gopi Jana Palahaba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Palahaba Girivardhari Yashoda Nandan Brajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandan Brajadana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Gopi Jana Palahaba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Palahaba Girivardhari Yashoda Nandan Rajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajadana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astatar Shri Śrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astatar Shri Śrimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Veda Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Yamuna Maya Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. So we're continuing our marathon reading of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam. We're up to the third canto, which is entitled The Status Quo, and chapter 26, which is Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, which is in the beginning of the teachings of Lord Kapila, which continue throughout practically the rest of this chapter, this canto rather. So we're on text number 55 today. Granat Vayu Abidyetam Akshini Shakshuhu Etayoho Tasmat Surya Nabidyetam Karno Shrotram Tataha Dishaha Granadvayar Habidyetam Akshini Chakshur Etayo Tasma Suryo Nyabidyetam Karno Shotram Tato Dishaha Granadvayur Abidyetam Akshini Chakshur Etayo Tasmat Suryo Nyabidyetam Karno Shotram Tato Dishaha Granadvayur Abidyetam Akshini Chakshur Etayo Tasmat Suryo Nyabidyetam Karno Shotram Tato Dishaha. Please chant. Granadvayur Abidyetam Akshini Chakshur Etayo Tasmat Suryo Nyabidyetam Karno Shotram Tato Dishaha Granadvayur Abidyetam Akshini Chakshur Etayo Tasmat Suryo Nyabidyetam Karno Shotram Tato Dishaha Granadvayur Abidyetam Akshini Chakshur Etayo Tasmat Suryo Nyabidyetam Karno Shotram tato dishaha. Gunadvayur abhidyetam. Akshini chakshu etayo. Tasmatsriya abhidyetam. Karna shrocham tato dishaha. Gunadvayur abhidyetam. Akshini chakshu etayo. Tasmatsriya abhidyetam. Karna shrocham tato dishaha. So we'll go through the word meanings. Granat, from the olfactory sense. Vayuhu, the wind god. Vidyetam, appeared. Akshini, the two eyes. Chakshuhu, the sense of sight. Etayoho, in them. Tasmat, from that. Suryaha, the sun god. Nyabidyetam, appeared. Karno, the two ears. Shotram, the auditory sense. Tata, from that. Dishaha, the D's presiding over the directions. Okay. In the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god who presides over that sense. Thereafter a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in them the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god who presides over it. Next there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory sense, and in its wake the devatas, or the deities who preside over the directions. Please repeat. In the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god who presides over that sense. Thereafter a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in them the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god who presides over it. Next there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory sense, and in its wake the devatas, or the deities who preside over the directions. Does anybody know what the directions are? Please tell us. Northeast, southwest, northwest. Yeah, very good. Just checking. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The appearance of different bodily parts of the Lord's universal form, and the appearance of the presiding deities of those bodily parts is described. As in the womb of a mother, a child gradually grows different bodily parts, so in the universal womb, the universal form of the Lord gives rise to the creation of various paraphernalia. Senses appear, and over each of them there is a presiding deity. It's corroborated by this statement of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam and also by Brahma Samhita that the sun appeared after the appearance of the eyes of the universal form of the Lord. The sun is dependent on the eyes of the universal form. The Brahma Samhita also says that the eye is the sun of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Yat chakshu esha savita. Savita means the sun. The sun is the eye of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, everything is created by the universal body of the Supreme Godhead. Material nature is simply the supplier of the materials. The actual creation is done by the Supreme Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Under my direction does material nature create all moving and non-moving objects in the cosmic creation. Om Jnana Timandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Nami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nivaseshwani Vadi Pastatya Adeshtai Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasani Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasindubhyascha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. So we're hearing about the appearance of the senses and the sense organs, actually, and the controlling deities of the senses. It occurs to me that it's described that these are manifest from different of the three modes of material nature. The senses are a product of the mode of passion. The sense organs, which are part of the gross body, the gross material elements, would be a product of the mode of ignorance, and the demigods are a product of the mode of goodness. So, of course, this is news for us because in our Western educational system, we don't learn about the controlling deities of the senses, and we also really don't have a idea of the senses being different from the sense organs, really. So that's an interesting. So this is additional knowledge that we're given in this Vedic literature. Because the Vedic literature comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's omniscient, we can learn about things that are beyond our sense perception. The scientists basically can only tell us things that they can perceive with their senses or instruments that extend the power of the senses. But things that are completely beyond the sense perception of a human being, they can't say anything about. They can hypothesize about whether things exist or not, but they can't give any factual knowledge. So, so in the Vedic understanding, every chunk of the universe has some personality associated with it. Like, we have like a mayor of New York, and we have a governor of the state of New York, and we have a president of the United States. So every chunk of territory in the universe has someone in control of it. There's a sun god we're learning about here, and we're learning about the wind god, and then we're learning about the god who presides over the directions. We also learn what the directions are. That there's up and down, and then the four main directions, and then the southeast, northwest, etc. So then there's the idea about, like, we have the auditory sense, the sense of hearing, and then we have the ear, and then we have the auditory nerves, and then we have the auditory processing center in the brain, which is all made out of gross matter, made out of earth, water, fire, and air, and ether. But we learn from the Sankhya philosophy that these senses are different from that, because we have the Sankhya philosophy deals with the 24 elements, which are the five gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, and then there's contaminated consciousness. So that gives us 9. Then we have the 5 working senses, which brings it up to 14, and then the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, which brings it up up to 19, and then we have the 5 sense objects, touch, taste, and like that, which bring it up to 24. Then they add the soul, which brings it up to 25, and the super soul, that brings it up to 26. So the sense of sight is another element in the Vedic scheme that's different than the eye, the optic nerve, and the visual processing center of the brain. So there's empirical evidence for this, which is interesting. In the history of the Hare Krishna movement, there was a magazine called Origins Magazine. In the true sense, it wasn't a magazine because there was only one issue. They were planning to have multiple issues, but the person responsible for it came down from their position and was no longer able to fulfill his desires in that regard. So at least there's one of them, and is there anybody who hasn't read Origins Magazine here? So, okay, we got a few. So Origins Magazine, it's worth reading. I can summarize it. Actually, if it's easier for you to hear about things than read them, Sadhguru has a series of lectures which he gave during Bhagavatam class in San Diego in the middle 80s. This came out in 84. And he, because he was one of the main authors, along with Druta Karma and Bhutatma Prabhu, all of who were involved in Bhaktivedanta Institute. He gave lectures on the different topics, and there's about 11 or 12 of them, which are worth listening to. So basically, the Origins Magazine deals with evidence that different scientific theories that try to explain everything without God aren't actually true. And then it also has evidence that different Vedic ideas actually are true. So one of the things that they mention in that book is called out-of-body experiences. And they talk about a guy named Michael Sabum, who was a professor of cardiology at Emory University, and he had different patients who were resuscitated for cardiac arrest from heart attack, and some of them reported floating above their body and watching the doctors trying to resuscitate them. And it wasn't just one or two; it was like a large number of cases. And he didn't believe in this kind of stuff. He thought it was all hocus pocus, it's all illusion. But he decided to systematically investigate. So all the people, he had everybody try to describe their resuscitation. And he found out that all the people who had these out-of-body experiences, they got all the main items in the right order, and they didn't make any major mistakes. Whereas the people who hadn't had the out-of-body experiences, they said things were done that weren't done, and they got things in the wrong order, and they clearly didn't know what was going on. So he thought of different reasons for this, but he couldn't come up with anything, and finally concluded maybe the subtle mind that splits apart from the body is the soul that's described by many, at the time of death, is the soul, which is described by many religious systems. So in these cases, the brain isn't functioning. There's no visual processing going on in the brain, and there's no blood supply going to the senses, so people aren't seeing, there's no impulses down the optic nerve, but yet they're seeing this going on. Often they're situated at a position that even if they were alert, they couldn't see it from that angle. But they're actually seeing how they're being resuscitated. So that indicates that the senses are functioning, even though the eye isn't functioning, the brain isn't functioning, and the optic nerve isn't functioning. The senses are functioning, which indicates that they actually are different than the gross material body, which is actually evidence of this truth, that these senses are different than the sense organs of the body. The most amazing of those studies was by a guy named Kenneth Ring. And he did these out-of-body research on people who had been blind their entire life. They hadn't seen anything their whole life, right? But in this out-of-body state, they actually saw things that they'd never seen before. And not only that, so I can see the front of your sweatshirt, right? But I can't read the writing on the back. But in this out-of-body state, even though they were blind from birth, they could see 360 degrees around. So not only were they able to see, but they were able to see in a supernatural way. So there's a lot going on as far as the senses go that we don't know about, and some of that is being hinted at here in these descriptions, that the senses are another feature of nature, different from the sense organs. As far as controlling deities, there are actually many traditions that talk about how they're deities in control of different features of nature. There's like the Romans, they had demigods, the Greeks had demigods, the various Nordic people, they also had demigods. So rather than hypothesize that all this is imagination, you could hypothesize that thousands of years ago, people were able to see demigods, which is actually what the Vedic literature says. Actually, even the Pandavas saw the demigods. Kunti had a very intimate relationship with the demigods, so they were definitely factual for her. Right? And Arjuna was the son of Indra. He actually got to see his father. He got to visit the heavenly planet where he was given a half-elevated seat. And so it's described that people used to perform sacrifices, and the demigods would come to receive their share in the sacrifices. But when Lord Buddha appeared, he stopped the sacrifices because they're abusing the animal sacrifices, because they're just killing the animals to eat their flesh. And the Supreme Lord didn't like that. So he realized they weren't qualified to study the Vedic literature because they were in the mode of ignorance. So they said, don't follow this Vedic literature. I'll give you something else to follow that you can actually do. So they stopped the sacrifice of the demigods, and therefore the demigods didn't come here anymore. Therefore people couldn't see them, and they decided that all these stories about demigods were just mythology because they didn't have any factual experience of the demigods. So, then there's some talk about how the sun is the eye of the Lord. That comes up in other places. And the Krishna identifies himself with the sun in the Bhagavad Gita in at least a couple of places. There's that verse, Rasoham apsakonteya prabhasmi sashi suryo. He says he's the light of the sun and the moon. Sashi is the moon and Suryo is the sun. And later on, in the 10th chapter, he talks about how he's the radiant sun. So Krishna identifies himself with the sun. The sun's said to be the light of the Brahmajyoti coming into this world through the sun. And without the sun, the place is completely dark. So the sun is a way we can meditate on God through the sun. Also, when they chant the Gayatri mantra, the sun is also mentioned. And then Prabhupada ends the purport by talking about how all these ingredients are supplied by the material nature, but they don't do anything, they just sit there unless the Lord starts moving them according to his will. He quotes that very, very famous verse, which is a Bhakti Shastri memorization verse, 9-10, Mayadakshena Prakriti, how he, under his superintendence, the material nature is doing all these things. So basically the scientists have all their theories about how the world came to be, but And they involve chemistry and physics. And chemistry involves the elements, but they don't say where the elements originally came from. Where did the big chunk that exploded, where did that chunk come from? Right? And then all these interactions of chemical elements are operating under different laws of physics, and they also don't know where the laws of physics came from. So those are two important missing items in scientific knowledge: where the matter comes and where the laws of physics come. So we're learning that here, that actually there's a supreme person behind everything. So those are a few thoughts about some of the ideas in this verse. Does anybody have any questions or comments or realizations about anything that was said either in the translation, the purport, or the lecture? Yes, sir, in the back. The study of Krishna consciousness is it deals with things that are material, and it deals things that are beyond the material. Like, for example, if we take the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna describes that he has a material energy, and it says, Bhumir no vayu kam manabhuti evacha, composed of the gross body, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then the subtle body, our mind, our intelligence, our false sense of identity. And then he says, beyond that, aparaya sitastanyam prakriti vidime pram jivabhuta mahabahoyedam doyate jagat, there's a spiritual energy consisting of the living entities who are struggling with this material nature and thus sustaining the universe. So we talk about the material energy, and we'll talk about a spiritual energy, and then beyond that we talk about the Supreme Lord, who's the source of the material and the spiritual energy. So modern science just deals with material energy and doesn't have anything to say about the spiritual energy, and doesn't have anything to say about the controller of both. So what we're being given here in the Vedic literature is additional knowledge that's actually very important. It's interesting, of the three pieces of knowledge, the Lord, the living entities, and the material nature, the scientists only know the material nature, which is the least important of all three. And the most important is the Lord, of course, because without the Lord, nothing else would be in existence. And because we are living entities and we have a relationship with the Lord, and that the perfection of that relationship is love of God, the people who solely accept the version of modern science can't have any appreciation of bhakti, because it's dealing with two things that they don't know about the existence of, the soul and the supersoul. So we're given in this tradition additional knowledge that the material scientists don't have about the spiritual nature and about the Supreme Lord, who's the controller of the spiritual and material nature. Any other questions? Yes?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, so speak really slowly so it doesn't echo so much and the people have a chance of actually hearing online.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this. I just came in, so I'm commenting on this last part, but why is it that you think scientists do not go beyond the material? Why do you feel that they don't come to this realization that after going so deep into the material? I was reading an article where there was some scientists, and they were coming to this realization that there must be something more to life than the material. Because I couldn't remember why they said, but why do you feel that more scientists do not have that? They don't kind of go beyond the material or try to analyze beyond.
Of course, some scientists are atheists, so they don't think there is anything beyond the material. And then some are open to the idea that there might be. But their methodology, basically they're just measuring things. And you can't measure the soul and you can't measure the super soul. So as long as you're dealing with things that you can measure with your senses, then you can only go so far. So you can do scientific experiments and show evidence consistent with the reality of there being a soul, or evidence consistent with the idea of God. Like there are many studies have been done on prayer. Like one study, they had two people who had histories of heart disease, and they divided them in half. And one group had people praying for their well-being, and the other group didn't. And the people who had people praying for them, they had fewer repeat heart attacks, whereas the people who didn't have people praying for them had more. And there's many such studies along those lines. So that doesn't actually prove the existence of God, but it shows, that if there were a benevolent being who could hear prayers and who was in complete control, that could result, and that maybe perhaps there is. And then, of course, and then this idea of these out-of-body experiences are also evidence that something exists beyond the body. And then the past life memories are evidence for the existence of reincarnation. So you can do, I guess, scientific studies, but you can't see the soul transmigrating from one body to another. But you can say that, well, how does this kid who's 5 years old know all these details of this person's life who they never met, their family never met, and know details about this place they'd never been to or knew anybody had been to, so that reincarnation is a reasonable explanation. After 30 years of research, Ian Stevenson said, an intelligent person could consider reincarnation a reality based on my research. So some scientists aren't open to that kind of stuff because they're atheists and they just don't believe in it. But others are more open to it. And there's a society for the, let's see, what is it called? Society for Scientific Exploration, which deals with things that are willing to study things that are taboo according to the other scientists. And Sadhuputta got some things published in their journal, JSE, the Journal of Scientific Exploration. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, just on that, it kind of reminds me of how faith is believing in something that is unknown or unseen. So when the mentality wants to know everything or see everything, it's difficult maybe to have faith. So, thank you.
Yes, but the limitation of that is then you're making the assumption that the only things that exist are things I can perceive, or the most important things in existence are what I can perceive with my senses. Whereas actually, that's not the case according to the Vedic knowledge. The most important thing is beyond the senses, our soul and the Supreme Soul who's the source of our identity and the relationship between us. And that's why Prabhupada criticized the scientists, because they put forward a worldview in which the soul and the super soul don't exist. And therefore, bhakti, which is the activities performed by the soul in hopes of developing a relationship with the super soul, has no meaning in their philosophy. So Prabhupada also criticized the Mayavadis because they also put forward a philosophy in which bhakti has no meaning, because the soul and the super soul are one, and therefore there's no question of devotion of the soul for the super soul and relationship. So those are the two main enemies of Prabhupada, the Mayavadis and the scientists, because they present a worldview in which bhakti would never arise. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have one more. One more question. How would one receive the experience of the Lord without the use of literature or experiencing landmarks that have great significance to the war?
Well, the Lord is perceived by His mercy. So, generally His mercy comes in the form of the revealed literature and the saints. He's not limited. Like in our tradition, there was a certain king named Prataparuja, and he very much wanted the association of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya, they're thinking of ways they could make Lord Chaitanya, because he was a renunciate, he didn't want to see a king, because kings are absorbed in sense gratification, and they renounce people who want to stay away from sense gratification, and people were attached to it. But so his friends were trying to think how we can get Lord Chaitanya to feel good thoughts about the king. So one thing they did was they dressed up his son so that he reminded him of Krishna. And when the Lord Chaitanya saw the prince, he was reminded of Krishna, and he actually embraced him. And that prince got love of Godhead, the perfection, right there, without doing anything, without chanting any rounds or following any regular principles. Just like that, he got the full experience of love of God. So that's the position of God. He can bestow His causeless mercy, and you can experience Him just like that. But generally, Prabhupada would use the analogy of a person getting an honorary degree, right? So there are people who get honorary degrees from the university without actually enrolling and going through the courses and doing the papers and the tests. They've done a lot of research in the area on their own, and the college gives them an honorary degree. So no one expects to get an honorary degree, but everyone goes to school and goes through all the processes to get their degree, but a few people do get these honorary degrees. So in the same way, the Lord does from time to time bestow special mercy on individual people, but generally, by following the instructions of the Lord in the revealed literatures and given by the saints, one advances in devotion, and in response to the development of one's devotion, the Lord reveals Himself to that devotee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, well, I've got zillions of things I'd rather do than get Bhagavatam class. Like finish my blog. So, does anybody have any more questions? Otherwise, you can chant japa and read your favorite literature. Yes?
In Krishna-krpa, when Mother Yasoda's reading prayers to Krishna after he is attacked by Putana, she names all the different gods to protect different parts of the body. So I just remembered that, and it's really beautiful. I could read it quick if you wanted me to. It's small, but
if you like, it's Bhagavatam classes for glorifying Krishna.
okay. My dear Krishna, may Lord who is known as Ajab protect your legs. May Lord Maniman protect your knees. May Lord Yaga protect your thighs. May Lord Achyuta protect your upper waist. May Lord Hayagriva protect your abdomen. May Lord Kasa protect your heart. May Lord Isha protect your chest. May Lord Surya protect your neck. May Lord Vishnu protect your arms. May Lord Krishna-krpa protect your face. May Lord Ishvara protect your head. May Lord Chakradhara protect your front. May Lord Gadadhara protect your back. May Lord Madhusudana, who carries a bow in his hand, protect your right side. May Lord Ajana protect your left side. May Lord Urugaya, with his conch shell, protect you on all sides. May the person of Godhead Upendra protect you from above, and may Lord Tarksha protect you on the ground. May Lord Haladar protect you from all sides. May the person of Godhead known as Hirshikesh protect all your senses. May Lord Narayan protect your life heirs. May the Lord of Svetakripa Narayan protect the core of your heart. May Lord Yogasara protect your mind. May Lord Parshnigarba protect your intelligence. And may the Supreme Person of God protect your soul. While you are playing, may Lord Govinda protect you from all sides. And when you are sleeping, may Lord Madhav protect you from all danger. When you are walking, may the Lord of Vaikuntha protect you from falling down. When you are sitting, may Lord Narayan give you all protection. And while you are eating, may the Lord of all sacrifices give you all protection. You just reminded me. I used to recite that, actually. I used to have memorized, but I forgot. So.
Yeah, that's very much along the lines of the tilak. When we put on the tilak, we ask the Lord in his different incarnations to sit in different parts of our body, protect. So, of course, those are different than the demigods that control the different parts of the body. They're the incarnation. This list of deities is different Vishnu forms that we're praying to. There's many. We learn that there's different Vishnu forms that are named differently according to the 24 combinations of holding the 4 weapons. And they're beyond the devatas who are controlled by them. So we're always looking forward to the protection of Vishnu because he's the supreme controller, and the devotees realize that because Krishna is the supreme controller, Vishnu is the supreme controller, that he's the only person who can actually ultimately protect anyone. So if we want ultimate protection, we should seek that from Vishnu, and that's very nicely described in the Nrsimha Lila, where the Lord manifests his infallible protection against one of the greatest demons who's ever lived, to protect his devotees. So I'll just read the verse again, like they sometimes do at the end of the class. In the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god who presides over that sense. Thereafter a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in them a sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god who presides over it. Next there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory sense, and in its wake the Digdevatas, or the deities who preside over the directions. So we'll continue reading about the development of the universal form in future classes. Thank you for your kind attention. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.